And we are recording. Kainiak, welcome to the
Okay.
Honey Badger Diaries.
Yeah, welcome. It's nice to be here.
Thanks for being here. Oh, I didn't double check if my mic is actually. Well, you're hearing me okay, I guess, right?
Yes.
Let me double check here. Okay, I'm gonna start over just because I can
Yeah,
cut
no
this out
problem.
from the podcast. Okay, Kainiak, welcome to the Honey Badger Diaries.
Nice to be here.
You may not be very well known among my audience, so I would like to start with a brief sort of introduction of who you are.
Sure. I am a musician and I trade cryptocurrencies. That's my profession. I've been making music basically since I was 4 years old. I'm 34 years old now, and but it's only been the last 2-3 years that I started making money with my music. So I'm getting to a point now where I can actually. Well, just living off my music is not enough. But if I take the money that I make with my music and then trade crypto with it, then I have enough money to live off that.
Right, and you're Dutch like me, but
Yeah, so I'm
you live in
100%.
Canada.
Yeah, that's correct. 100% Dutch. Got a chain of forefathers that has always been Dutch. Like I don't know how far I have to go back to find somebody in there that is not Dutch. And I was born in Canada, so I have dual citizenship. I have a Dutch passport and a Canadian passport. But my parents moved back to Europe when I was just a little baby. So I grew up in Belgium, and then I decided to immigrate back to Canada about 10 years ago. So the last 10 years I've been living in Canada.
Right, and one thing you haven't mentioned yet is that you are, or you were, or we'll get into that in a bit, but you are or were very active in the Bitcoin Cash community, right?
I have been active in the Bitcoin community since 2011, July 2011, when I first heard about Bitcoins through a forum post on tweakers.net, which is famous Dutch computer forum. And ever since I've been active in the Bitcoin community until I got kicked out together with a whole bunch of people around 2015. And then we continued the Bitcoin community with Bitcoin Cash.
Just to be clear, what do you mean by kicked out? This is probably one of the things we disagree on, but or maybe not. I'm
Well,
not sure what you mean by that.
Bitcoin was about freedom, which meant that as adults, we could talk about Bitcoin and there was freedom. And then in 2015, everything changed. There was no freedom on the Bitcoin talk forum. There was no freedom /Bitcoin. And people that protested that, people that wanted to be able to talk about Bitcoin freely without getting censored, they were all kicked out of the Bitcoin community. And the Bitcoin community continued with a very small group of people that kicked everybody out. Then the price went to 2,000 and they filled the Bitcoin community with a whole bunch of people that didn't really care about anything but numbers going up, the price going up. And that's the situation we are today. We had to rebuild everything from scratch because now we had to deal with a whole bunch of people that were controlling these forums and places on the internet that told us that we were scammers, that we were rebels, that whatever we were doing. So we've been rebuilding the Bitcoin community since 2015.
Right. So by kicked out of the community, you pretty specifically mean, it sounds like, the Reddit and Bitcoin Talk forums.
Yeah, and all the other places as well. Like, I mean, there wasn't really that much Telegram used around that time, but there were other like IRC and that kind of stuff. Just any place online where you could talk about Bitcoin. A small group of people hijacked that, and they kicked everybody else that didn't agree with them. They said, "This is Bitcoin, and if you disagree with us." So it's kind of ironic when everybody's talking about how Bitcoin is, it's censorship resistant, but the people that say that commit an incredible amount of censorship. And so yeah, that's the irony of the whole case. But you know what, like we found peace with it because we were worried that like Bitcoin would continue to grow in price, but then it hit 20,000 and it's never going back there because it's just the utility of it sucks.
Yeah, so I disagree with most of that. I don't really want to make this podcast a
No,
Bitcoin versus Bitcoin
nope.
Cash type of
No,
discussion.
that's my perspective. That is my perspective, and I
Yeah,
share that
yeah,
perspective with a whole bunch of people. But yeah, let's continue to talk about what you really want to talk about.
yeah. So to be to rebut what you said, in like, you'll have to give me the opportunity to sort of at least present the counter argument.
Sure.
I think that the moderators of these websites considered a contentious hard fork, so hard fork without consensus that there should be a hard fork. So to do it in that order, to do a hard fork without there being consensus first, would result in an altcoin. So promoting that would be promoting an altcoin, essentially, and therefore they didn't want to have it on these forums, which is a perspective on what Bitcoin is. It's almost a philosophical question.
Yeah, but like I cannot, like, if you separate a young community like that, how can I interact? How can I talk about Bitcoin when all my accounts are banned? Right? All these people that got kicked out, doesn't matter what reason they got kicked out, they were no longer considered part of the Bitcoin community because they couldn't talk about Bitcoin. All places where everybody was hanging out, all these people were removed. So what did they do? Well, they started their own community and they regrouped.
Yeah.
So if you don't want altcoins, don't kick people out of your community, because that's how you'll get an altcoin. Isn't that pretty straightforward?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that's necessarily.
You're saying that Bitcoin is so fragile that if you allow people to freely talk about it, something is gonna go wrong, because that's what your opinion is.
No,
because
I think
we had to get removed and kicked out from all these online places. We couldn't talk what we wanted to talk about.
I don't know what would have happened to Bitcoin, but I do know that the forum itself, it's very easy to spam forums with sock puppets and all of these things. So I
It's
do think
not forums. It's the Bitcoin community. That is Bitcoin Talk, Reddit /Bitcoin. It's other places on the internet too. It's IRC. It's all these channels.
Here's where I agree with you. I agree that the namespace, the domain space thing is a bit of an issue, because there's only one subreddit that can be called Bitcoin, and therefore whoever controls that has some level of influence. But the exact same thing is true for a website. There's only one website that can be called bitcoin.com, and whoever controls that has some sort of influence.
And it's okay now. We have rebuilt this community. I have enough people. There's enough people of value now that I can it's okay. This was in 2015. We're in 2020 now. This was 5 years ago. I'm okay with the situation. I found peace with it.
Cool. Okay, so let's move on. You messaged me about 2 weeks ago, I think. I first want to ask another question, because we're already sort of noticing this. What's your opinion of me, or what was your opinion of me? I know you didn't like me very much. Is that correct?
No, I've always liked you, because you're a straightforward guy, and you're not a kind of guy that would walk away because he disagrees, or shuts down an argument because he is so. No, I've always liked you, but my opinion of you, which is exactly still the same as in the beginning, I see you as somebody that has been influenced by people that know more about Bitcoin than you do, and their mindset, their perception of Bitcoin has become your perception of Bitcoin. That's how I see you. And so I also see you as, because you've turned yourself into a Bitcoin tech blogger in the Netherlands. So within the Netherlands, we have quite a bit of authority when you speak about Bitcoin in Dutch. There's a lot of other people that know even less about Bitcoin that listen to your opinion. So you've been really influential in the Netherlands. And since you repeat all these talking points that you got from other people, you are let me just say, if you would ever change your mind and you would become part of the Bitcoin Cash community, because you would do that, a lot of people, the Bitcoin Cash community in the Netherlands would probably rapidly grow, because a whole bunch of people from the Bitcoin community would go into the Bitcoin Cash community. That's always been my opinion of you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I that's nice of you. It would be flattering if I have that level of influence. I kind of tend to think that ideas stand on their own merit, and the idea is that sure, I've learned a lot from people more knowledgeable than me, including about Bitcoin, but I do think I'm still sort of using my own filter and my own brain to see if their arguments make sense, and I hope other people are doing the same when they listen to me or when they read my articles. Now, I will say I'm slightly surprised to hear you defend Bitcoin Cash like that, because the message I mentioned 2 weeks ago, you sent it to me in Dutch. I'm gonna translate it in English. You said, "Be safe, Aaron. You're totally wrong about Bitcoin Cash. It cannot be trusted. Protect your family, prep, read the Bible, survive." So why did you send this? What was I right about Bitcoin Cash?
Um, so I am a guy who is naturally predisposed towards conspiracy theories. At the same time, I realize that logically speaking, only a small percentage of conspiracy theories can be true. So I've thought a lot about this coronavirus,
Mm-hmm.
and I see my filter, the filter through which I see the world is the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I mean, I have reasons that I'm using this as my filter or part of my filter, but let's not go into them. So the Bible speaks about plagues.
Mm-hmm.
There are a number of stories that feature plagues in the Bible, in the Old Testament, primarily in the Old Testament.
There's the Exodus story, right? Is that the main one, or are there others?
No, there's a lot. Like plagues is something that it happens once in a while, and the Bible speaks about it.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bible speaks about it always in terms of it always falls under God's sovereignty.
The plagues do.
Everything.
Sure.
The Bible communicates a message that God is sovereign.
Mm-hmm.
And not necessarily that he is the originator of evil, but more that he is above evil, and that he is so omnipotent that he can use evil to get good stuff done in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So then Jesus famously, one day when he was walking with his disciples, they were walking around the temple in Jerusalem, and his disciples were really impressed by how big these buildings were and how magnificent this temple was.
Mm-hmm.
This temple had been destroyed 1 or 2 times, and it had been rebuilt twice. And of course, eventually it was destroyed in the year 69 when the Jewish people rebelled against the Romans, and the Romans kind of leveled the whole city and destroyed the temple. But before Jesus was crucified, his disciples were talking about how magnificent these temples were. And then Jesus started talking about what is called it's like in Matthew 24. It's in some of the other Gospels as well. It's his epilogue on the end of all things, or the end of the world. And therein Jesus says, you know what? If you hear about wars or rumors of wars or tsunamis or plagues, just know that that's not the end.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the end. All these things have to happen. All these things have always happened. All these things will always happen, but it's not the end. And so when I look at the world right now, so far what I see matches what I know from the Bible. Like, I mean, I one of the reasons that I trust the authority in the Bible is because I don't know any book in the world that is so right about human nature. Because I can look at myself, like I can analyze myself, and then I can lay that next to whatever the Bible says how I'm supposed to function as a human being. And then I can make a judgment to see if they're correct about how I analyze myself or not. And I can do that with other people too. And so this is one of the reasons why so far I'm still trusting in the authority of the Bible, because I have not found an instance where the Bible has lied to me, where the Bible is telling me that reality is this way, and then I look at reality and it turns out to be a different way. That has not happened in my life yet.
So just to be clear, what is your flavor of religion? I'm sorry, I'm not sure what the best way to put that is.
So first of all, the Bible says that true religion that is pleasing to God is taking care of orphans and widows. So the biblical
let me rephrase. Which church do you go to? I guess that's how I should put that question, right?
At the moment, all churches are closed.
Yeah, sure.
I don't have a single church that I go through. If you ask me how do you call yourself, I am a follower of Jesus Christ.
Okay, so you're not ascribing to any particular,
No,
not okay, got it.
no. I believe that the Bible is 66 books, starting with Genesis, ending with Revelation. That these were written down by various human authors over a really long span of time. I think 4,000 years or 3,000 years. They were edited and like redirected a number of times, like old stories that were collected again and that were edited, that were maybe updated to, language keeps on changing and stuff. I believe that that these books, although they were written by human beings, they were inspired by the Holy Spirit, which I believe to be a person, like just you and an entity that really exists, that is beyond inspiration and creativity and that kind of stuff. And so that it is actually the being that created everything that is using these 66 books to speak to the people that he created, namely human beings.
So is the
And that
Bible literally true, or do you see it more as a metaphor story or what?
No, I see it. I am of the opinion that if you do not understand what you don't understand about the Bible, you gotta see everything at face value first, and then if you don't understand something, you take it at face value, and then as you go deeper into the Bible, you'll realize that some stuff in there is symbolically and metaphorically, but I believe by far like 99% of that is literal. I believe that there's really a guy named Adam and a woman named Eve, and that all these characters in the Bible really existed. I really believe that Jesus really existed. I really believe that Jesus died. I really believe that something unexplainable happened, a supernatural event where somebody that died rose out of his grave 3 days later. I believe all these things really happened in the past.
And then do you think that the coronavirus, the corona crisis we're seeing now is literally a biblical plague?
No, because the Bible just calls everything that happens kind of biblical. So every plague, this coronavirus is not any different from the Spanish flu or any other plagues that we've had on the planet. Like we had bubonic plagues, and I mean there's a lot of plagues in history, right? And so far, Spanish flu has been the most deadly. But then again, like you gotta always put everything in perspective, right? In terms of what percentage of the population died, the bubonic plagues and stuff, the black plagues was far more deadly than the Spanish flu because it killed like 35% of the population. While the Spanish flu, I don't know how many people were there around after World War I was done. I think there were like 1 billion or 2 billion people on the planet.
I would have guessed 1 billion.
Yeah, and so it killed 60 million. So that's like, I don't know, what's that, 10%? That's less than 10%, I think. Yeah, 100 million would be 10%. So yeah, I see all plagues. I see everything that happens in the world as biblical. And I'm personally so the book of Revelation, I believe everything in the book of Revelation, none of it has happened yet. It all takes place in the future. That's why I've always been so interested in it, because when I started reading the Bible at a young age, I was like, you know what? Like when I was 11 or 12, I switched from like the children's Bible to like the real Bible. And I've always really been focused towards the book of Revelation because I reasoned, well, all the stories that are in the Bible, they are in my past, but this story here seems to be in my future. So that's why I've always been very interested in the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation starts with the opening of 7 seals, and I don't think the first seal has been opened yet. And I think if that happens, we'll know here on Earth that something has radically changed after that seal has been opened. And the second seal.
Go for it.
Yeah, the first seal is kind of like nobody really figured out what that means. It's just saying that there is a rider on a white horse with a bow, and that he's going to be victorious. They give him a crown and he's going to be victorious. So I don't really, that's a hard one to interpret. That can have so many meanings. Historically, some people say that's Jesus because he shows up later in the book riding a horse as well. This time he has a sword instead of a bow. And other people say it's like the Antichrist. And then the second one is easy to interpret. The second one just says that all peace will be taken away from the earth and people will start slaughtering again. So that's World War III. God really likes the number 3, so it makes sense that you have a World War I, a World War II, and the last World War is World War III. Also, we have enough weapons now that if we have a decent World War III, we could kill all of humanity and just be done with it. So from that perspective, it kind of makes sense. And then the seal after that is a big famine. It makes sense that if you have a world war that destroys most of the infrastructure on the planet, that what happens after that is a big famine. As all infrastructure is destroyed, we'd have to rebuild farming and everything. And if you have 2 or 3 billion people on the planet and you have no farming, you're going to have a big famine.
So why did you recommend me to read the Bible? Is this because you think these kinds of things are going to happen soon? Is this
yes,
the
reason why I recommend people the reasoning behind it is very simple. So you have these 7 seals. If you'd memorize all 7, if you do that today, if you read those 7 seals and you go through them until you kind of know, some of the things are very straightforward and others are less straightforward. If you go through all these 7 seals and you have that in your head, and like a couple of months from now, all that stuff starts happening in that order, you might reason, well, this is strange. I've read this here, and it is now actually happening in my future. Is this really an accurate description of the future? How is that possible? But if you don't do that, if all this stuff starts happening, and then somebody says, oh, that's in the book of Revelation, and you then start reading, and then you figure out that it's exactly written down there what you have already seen, you're going to reason, no, somebody must have edited this book. This cannot be true. This is impossible. Somebody must have seen all this happened and then edited the book of Revelation. And this is why I truly believe that it is possible that a lot of stuff that is in the book of Revelation is going to happen in people's lives on the planet. And I think if that is the case, I think it's important that people read about it before it happens rather than it happening first and then them reading about it, because in that order, they're not going to believe it's prophecy. They're just going to believe somebody is bamboozling them.
Right. Well, I have a Bible laying around here somewhere. So someone gave it to me as a present. I'm pretty sure they're not going to edit that one. So that would work as well, right?
Well, but you have that's true, but like the amount of gaslighting that is happening on the planet right now is insane. Like when you read the news, you have no idea if that's true or not true anymore. Journalism is not respected anymore. Most people see journalism as entertainment nowadays, and they just read and they believe whatever they want to believe. And you have a lot of people like that in the world. Not everybody, but there is a lot, especially on the internet. On Facebook, when people edit a picture for fun, some people will have a statement there saying this was Photoshopped. They don't want to deceive anybody, but most people don't do that. Or if the first person does it, the second person who shares it removes that from there. And then you have, on a regular basis, I see people on my Facebook page talking about something that I know from experience isn't real. I can figure out when a Photoshop is a Photoshop. And so people are talking nowadays on Facebook about stuff that they don't know is real or not real, and there's a mixture between people that it's like the gaslighting is insane. The virtual reality is coming, and so I can definitely see you get to a point where you see all this stuff happening and you're like, hey, that's interesting, I'm gonna grab my Bible from here, and then you start questioning your own reality so much and do not believe anymore that nobody has messed with this book.
So just to be clear, because this podcast is about Corona, why are you sending this to me now? Why is this a precursor? Why are you connecting these dots in this way?
Because I got a vision.
Okay.
And that
What's this?
That I saw heaven open, and I saw a white horse that stepped out of an open heaven with a rider on it. Mm-hmm. Who had a sword on his back and a bow in his hand. And he walked through an edge of something, and he put an arrow on his bow. There was fire in his eyes. He looked at the point of the arrow, and the arrow went up into flames, like it started, the tip of the arrow started burning. And then he looked from heaven into the universe, looking at all the planets until he located Earth. And then he said to himself that he had hit the bullseye before and he was not going to miss. And then he let go of his arrow, which then a flaming arrow started shooting towards Earth. And then he took the crown off his head and he hurled that crown after the arrow. That's the vision that I saw.
Was this in a dream or just how did
No, this was, I have dreams while I am awake. I hardly ever dream at night. but I see stuff in my head once in a while.
What did you so what and how does the Bitcoin Cash tie into this, if at all? Because that's the other one. That's the other thing you sent me. I was right
Because
about Bitcoin
yeah,
Cash.
well,
Couldn't be trusted.
so okay. Here's the thing. So this comes from a conspiracy theory that a lot of people these days are a little freaked out about China.
Mm-hmm.
It's very rational to be freaked out by China because they are turning into this really economic powerhouse in the world, where they, there's this theory that says whoever controls the means of production kind of rules. I think it's Marxism or something, or
Sure,
Karl
that
Marx.
sounds very Marxist, yeah.
Yeah. So China is becoming a world leader on like any level, and they are not the type of country that, just like the United States and Russia, if they have to, they'll just invade a country to protect their interests. They're used to doing that, right? China doesn't do that. They don't invade Taiwan. They don't invade Japan to take vengeance on them for whatever Japan did to them during World War II, which was horrible.
Well, I
They
think
don't.
I think China grew by basically claiming more and more land. Like Tibet would be one example of that, and that's sort of how it grew to be such a big country, is by claiming more and more.
Well, but the
Historically,
historical borders of China have been mainly like how they are for a long time.
well, look at where the Chinese wall is. I think that's like middle in the country somewhere. It's very far from where the actual borders are now.
Yeah, but that has, that has grown over like a really long time, right?
Yes, for sure. It's a very long term
My point is that, like, you would think, since China is such a world power, why wouldn't they not have military in the Middle East among the Russians and the Americans? But they don't do that. They don't have, like, the Russians have military bases in some of the countries in the Middle East, and the Americans have bases in the other countries in the Middle East. And we've known that ever since the Cold War, or at least the end of World War II, Russia and the United States have kind of been fighting each other. But it's a Cold War. It's a hidden war. It's not a war that is like, you can't fight it out with nuclear weapons because you would destroy the whole planet in the process. But that war has never ceased. And China is not like directly involved in that. They have no bases or troops around the world. They have their troops in China, and they have some kind of weird relationship with North Korea. But other than that, China just rages economic warfare. They buy everything, and that's how they have an influence over the planet. They do it with money.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than brute force. The Americans, if they want to, they throw bombs on a country, and Russia does the same. But China seems to have a different strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So then, if you follow that line of thinking, then you're like, okay, so this coronavirus, just like all these other viruses, they all originated from China. Okay, so then first you would say, well, that's ridiculous. If they did this on purpose, why would they launch it on to their own population? But then when you start thinking, and I don't want to be the guy that gets to be known that puts out a conspiracy theory in the world that then people start believing, and then everybody starts hating on Chinese people. That I don't want to be that guy, right? So this is just,
but I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. This is just me irrationally thinking about stuff. I have no evidence whatsoever. I'm not saying it is like this. This is just a thought experiment that I'm doing. If I were playing a game of Risk, or if this were like a game and I have to defeat the United States and Russia without actually using nuclear weapons, how would I approach that?
Mm-hmm.
And so China has a control system that we know best from the book 1984, right? So the Chinese control system is you spy on everybody, and everybody that you perceive as a threat to whatever control system you have, you take them off the street, you put them in jail, or you send them to these concentration camps. And not only that, but half your population is doing the same thing. If you start, you get ratted out by other people. We know how this the most famous example of this control system of everybody ratting out everybody was the Stasi. In East Germany, right? Where at one point, I think 10% of the entire population was getting paid by the government to be a spy. and they ratted people out, right? Nowadays, the Chinese have to do that less and less and less because they control all the electronic devices, and they have artificial intelligence and neural networks. So a small group of people amplified by artificial intelligence is able to keep everybody under surveillance. They didn't have that.
Yes.
If the Stazis or the Nazis would have had that, they would have absolutely loved it, because
Sure.
it would have allowed Hitler to rule without having anybody under him. And if you don't have anybody under you, then you cannot get betrayed. That's kind of like, if you're a dictator, you need people that do exactly what you tell them to, but there's always a risk that they group together to conspire and take you out. That's the risk. Yeah. But that risk is slowly going away now, because you can kind of replace those people under you with artificial intelligence.
Well, or you can spy on them.
Yeah, exactly. You can, if you know what people are thinking, if you exactly know what the people under you are thinking, it's easy for you to influence their minds in such a way that they will never betray you. So, and then
get rid of the wrong
yeah.
ones.
So then, if we go on rationally thinking about this global team, you would say the end conclusion is one guy with a decent brain to computer interface, so he can rapidly have an interaction with computers at rapid speed, that has so much leverage through artificial intelligence and possibly even some dumb robots that he gets to control, that there is this one guy that holds all the power on the planet. And that's what the Book of Revelation speaks about. The Book of Revelation says, no, power is not getting decentralized. Power is getting more centralized and centralized and centralized, till the point that there is one human being that has almost all power on the entire planet. And then Jesus Christ will come back and destroy that guy. That's the theme in the Book of Revelation. The Book of Revelation is speaking about how the entire planet is going to go in the deepest slavery it has ever gone, where nobody knows what is real or fake anymore, and there is only one person that knows what true reality is, and everybody else is being deceived by him. Mm-hmm. So we know these themes from like the Matrix movies, right? In the Matrix movies, there is this, you've probably seen the Matrix movies, right?
I fucking love these movies. All three, by the way.
In the Matrix movies, you have the Oracle and you have the Architect, right? The Architect is kind of God. He designed this whole world. He designed a perfect world first, but it was rejected by human beings because there was no suffering. So, and I mean, these are not like the Matrix guys didn't invent these themes, right? They're just taken from here and here. And you go back to like, I can list you all sources and origin stories from which the Matrix movie was born. And then you go to those stories and there's origin stories before them. And you go back and back and back and back. And the original idea can be found in the Bible, literally. The idea that we live in a simulation can be found in Genesis in the first chapter. I find that fascinating.
I think there are a lot of religious references in the Matrix as well. Their ship is called the Nebuchadnezzar, which I think is from the Bible.
That's from the Bible. Yeah, that's from the Bible. Xerxes is the guy. That's an actual king that actually lived. Okay, so to go back to China, because that's where we're at. Okay, so if you are China and you're raging economic warfare, then, so right now the entire planet is in this situation where there is one tool that is essential for every country on the planet, and that is the US dollar. The entire planet is completely dependent on the US dollar. That's just the system we have right now. The Americans did that wonderfully. They have always made sure that any oil-producing nation will always sell their oil in dollars. If you start selling your oil in any other currency, the army will come in and they will take you out, or the CIA or NSA will go over there. They will swap your regime over until there's somebody that doesn't do that. They have done that for a long time. This is the main reason that they killed Gaddafi. The whole reason why ISIS was allowed to form was because Russia wanted to have a pipeline that could supply from the nations that are aligned with Russia, oil and gas directly to Europe. And the Americans wanted the nations in the Middle East that are aligned with them to do that. And those pipelines would make the most sense if they go through Syria and then through Turkey and then into Europe. And so the Russians wanted Assad to do this, and the Americans wanted Assad to do that. And that's the whole reason why they tried to take Assad out, and Russia has prevented that from happening. So well done, Putin. You have won this side of the war. So then back to the Chinese. So there's three major players, right? So There's the United States that seem to have most power, but that power is like breaking down really fast. There is Russia that has always had enormous amount of power, but they're kind of like, you know, after the Soviet Union broke down, they lost so much of their power and influence. So they're kind of like, you know, they're the least superpower at the moment. And then there's China, which has a whole different way of expanding whatever China is. And it's just they produce everything super cheap, and they're on top of the whole game. And they give the United States money so that their population can then use that money to buy products that are then created in China. So economic warfare, from a Chinese perspective, wouldn't it be nice if the reserve currency in the world is not the US dollar, but something Chinese, right? That will make a lot of sense. It gives you more influence and more power and more leverage. Okay, so then, but what do you do as China? Like, let's say you figure out a way of destroying the entire United States dollar. Well, crap, there's people trying to sleep here. I'll try to keep it down. I get there's people in the house here that have a night job, so they sleep during the day. When I get excited, I start talking too loud.
All right.
So the conspiracy theory is that China could crash the United States dollar as long as they have an alternative to offer to the world. And guess what that alternative is called? Bitcoin. Right?
Well, that seems like a big jump. You think Bitcoin was a Chinese invention, or what are you saying?
Yeah, I don't know this for sure, but I am starting to believe that maybe Bitcoin was a Chinese invention, and they named it after a Japanese guy. So if at one point the whole world is upset about Bitcoin because the Chinese are using it to dominate the whole world, they can always blame it on Japan because they don't really like Japan. So it would make sense that if very smart Chinese people that want to dominate the entire planet, I'm not talking about the whole Chinese population, I'm talking about some smart Chinese people with power that have figured a way out for China to become the supreme ruling country on the entire planet. It makes sense that then you tell everybody that it was invented by a Japanese guy. Okay. Because of the history that both countries have.
Sure, except Bitcoin is fully open source. China doesn't control it, does it?
No, but if China can crash the world economy while they are able to, if you crash the world economy, there will be pure chaos and looting and anarchy in a lot of countries. But the Chinese government might have enough control over their entire population. They might be able to be completely self-sufficient within China, that they can deal with that, and then they offer the world a solution, which is Bitcoin. And if you economically crash all the other countries, no other countries will be able to create ASICs because nobody will be working towards that. They'll be working towards not dying, right? So then you have the situation where China, if like in China they're working on an LFDR, in India as well, China will probably win this race. They'll probably have better nuclear power plants than the rest of the world eventually.
They're working on what?
They're working on a liquid fluorium thoride reactor.
Okay, have you never heard of that? I think I've heard of that.
Yeah. So the story is pretty easy. Right after World War II, after they dropped all their nukes, the scientists that worked on the nuclear weapons said, okay, well, this is really nice. We can destroy half the planet now, but can we use this for electricity? Can we use this to generate power? And then specifically, can we use this to generate power for either submarines or airplanes? Because we would really like to have a number of submarines with nuclear weapons on board spread out over the entire planet so that if we get nuked, we have nukes to send back to them. And they wanted to do the same thing with bombers. They wanted to have strategic bombers, biggest bombers in the world, fly around the planet 24/24 with nuclear missiles on board without those ever having to land. And if you can make a nuclear power plant that is small and light enough to put it in an airplane, you could accomplish that. So there's two teams that set out to do exactly that. And the team that was trying to get to work on a nuclear power plant that you could put in an airplane, they were working on the lifter. And the type of nuclear power plant we have now the most, which is the heavy water reactor, that's the type that they designed specifically towards submarines. That's the type that won. The other, in the 60s, all funding was cut for the lifter, and they kind of said, okay, well, we don't want that right now. And the main reason that they didn't want that was because through a lifter, you do not get nuclear material that you can use towards making nuclear weapons. So that's why they dropped that design in favor of the other design, because the byproduct was a lot of plutonium and uranium, which enriched uranium, which then you can take from there, enrich it more, and turn it into nuclear weapons.
Okay, but you were telling me, we were discussing something else, I think, about mining,
Yeah.
right?
So China is working towards having an operational lifter. And if they figure this out, that means that they'll have an incredibly safe nuclear design where you cannot have a core meltdown anymore, something that they can then start making smaller and smaller. If they crack this problem, and they will most likely crack it before Europe figures out fusion, if they crack this problem, they solve their entire energy crisis. If they fixed it, if they build a lifter and they build another one, and those power plants start working, the whole country can go electrical in 10, 15, 20 years, and they can completely let go of gas and oil.
Mm-hmm.
And after they do this, they have everything they need to create as much ASICs as they want and mine Bitcoin with as much hash rate as they want, because they will have solved their energy crisis.
Mm-hmm.
They will have solved the entire planet's energy crisis. And as long as they don't give every other country that design, they're safe. So that means that they could completely dominate Bitcoin, and they could mine Bitcoin with 70, 80, 90, 95% hash rate. And when China does that, they can do with Bitcoin whatever they want to do. They can censor, they will have complete control over all financial transactions on the entire planet. So the conspiracy theory is that they crashed the United States dollar first, they crashed the world economies, and they're using a bioengineered virus to do that. And they release a weak strain in their own population, because they know they can control their own population a lot better than Western countries can. They know if you lock Western people off long enough, eventually there'll be riots, because people are just not programmed to deal with situations like that. Because in the United States, we have a brave new world control system. In the Western nations, we have a brave new world control system. In China, we have a 1984 control system. And the 1984 control system is way better suited for this than the brave new world control system. And so they crash all world economies. They fix the world's energy problems by going completely electrical. And then their solution to there not being a working currency is Bitcoin, which then they control all the mining. That is the conspiracy theory. And that rationally makes a lot of sense.
Okay, that was a lot to take in. I love thinking about this stuff. I'm obviously not sure you're right about any of it. Well, there's I'm sure you know what you're talking about on some of these points. We'll have to see about how all of this develops. So this is why you say Bitcoin Cash cannot be trusted, right?
Well, none of the cryptocurrencies can be trusted.
Yeah.
The whole, when mining pools came around, some people said, okay, well, now it's no longer decentralized, because one mining pool will have 70% and the mining operator will have all power. But that turned out to be false, because once you have mining pools, you have a second mining pool, a third mining pool, a fourth. If you look at how many mining pools there are now, you have the same situation as individual miners. Bitcoin once started with 20 individual miners, and now maybe you have 20 mining pools. The step after that is what a country like the United States can go to all United States mining pools, all miners in the United States send the I might have to go to the basement or something.
Well, I will say, just to summarize, your point of not being able to trust Bitcoin Cash or any other cryptocurrency, including Bitcoin, is that China, in your speculation, in your conspiracy theory, would come up with some sort of energy invention that would be so powerful that all the other energy in the world, all the other miners in the world won't stand a chance. And as long as they don't share this secret, then they will control the blockchains. the blockchain, Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash. Proof of work blockchains, at least. Right? That would be a good one sentence summary or not. Are you still around? I guess Kaniak is moving to a different location. All right, I'll chat in the meantime. Otherwise, I'm not sure what to do. So to be clear, I don't have a religious background or anything. Well, actually, I did go to a Catholic school when I was a kid, but I don't consider myself. Oh shit, he's gone entirely now. All right. I maybe lost Wi-Fi. Anyways, yeah, he sent me these messages. I'm doing this podcast just because I find it interesting and I wanted to hear what he had to say. I'm enjoying the conversation. It's kind of wild, but I like discussing wild ideas, I guess. Okay, what do I do? Do I quit? Wait, I'll message him. I'm gonna message Kaniak, see what he says, because apparently the connection got lost. Sorry about this, everyone. I'll try to keep talking in the meanwhile as much as I can. Oh, what else can I say? Yeah, so he sent me the message that Bitcoin Cash cannot be trusted. Apparently, he actually thinks no cryptocurrency can be trusted. Proof of work can't be trusted. Which, if the theory would end up being true, as far as I know, I don't know of any evidence that it would be true. But if the evidence is true, if the theory holds up that someone somewhere invents invents more efficient energy and doesn't share with anyone, then yeah, that could be a problem for proof of work blockchains, of course. Sounds like a big if, but okay. Now I'm gonna let Kanyak back in. Hello. Oh, this takes a little while.
Hey,
Hello.
there I am again. Yeah,
You're back.
I was moving to the basement, but I forgot that I switched off my Wi-Fi. So when I disconnected my cables, my internet connection dropped because I wasn't on Wi-Fi.
I figured. Okay, well, I filled up the 2 minutes you were gone with a short monologue, so we can just continue where we were.
Yeah,
So you don't trust any proof of work blockchains that's based?
No, I do. I'm just saying that that proof of work can be defeated if the rest of the world does not realize where the danger is. So Bitcoin can stay decentralized, but we have to go from a mining pool level to a nation state level. Bitcoin can be decentralized as long as you have the United States mining it, you have Europe mining it. As long as there are a number of powerful players that are mining it, it will stay decentralized. But if China takes over and says Bitcoin is going to be our thing, we want to control the entire chain, as China can do that as long as they just make sure that other countries do not have enough electricity and are not able to produce as many ASICs as they do. So they can take over Bitcoin. That's the danger.
Yeah, we had this discussion recently on Telegram, just between the two of us, and I tend to disagree with this premise that if countries take over mining, then they will be in competition with each other, and therefore there will be no censorship. I find it quite likely that if these countries do come to dominate mining on a nation state level, then they might easily collude. They're already colluding on the anti-money laundering types of rules. I could easily see them form some sort of anti-money laundering, anti-Bitcoin thing where they will mine but not certain transactions. So I don't see that as a solution. I see that as a risk.
Right now, these nation states are not that much at war with one another. The only two countries that are really at war with one another is like the United States and Russia for a little bit. Other than that, it's like within the countries there are rich elite people. They have their interests, and they will work together with anybody from any other country that serves those interests. So that's the situation we have nowadays. And so it's not so much that it's like the United States that, like, the money laundering and stuff, that is controlled by a number of rich elite players that want to make sure they keep that power.
Sure. Through the
And
state.
yeah, through the state. But we know that states are controlled by smaller and smaller group of people as democracy is starting to break down. Just look at the power grab that happened in the United States. Like Trump yesterday, I watched him live. He told everybody he has total and all authority in the United States. That's what he said to the people.
Oh,
And he
I missed
does.
that. I missed that. That's interesting.
Yeah, not only that, but during the middle of a White House presentation about coronavirus, he started playing ads for his re-election campaign.
What,
That's,
really?
yeah, that's totally crazy. It's batshit insane, but that happened.
It's really amazing to see where the world has come. It's like this. It's been creeping up on everyone in a way that apparently every step along the way, no one was really alarmed enough. But just, just take a step back and just look at who's in charge of the most powerful country in the world right now. It's insane. Like, that
Yeah,
proves
and
we're doing something very wrong as humanity.
hopefully it is so insane that somebody like you would be like, maybe I should read the Book of Revelation just in case. because because I'm saying it is not insane. I'm saying that all of us are trapped in a story. That story is written down in the book of Revelation, and that's going to happen whether we like it or not. Everything in there is going to happen because we're trapped in a story that God is writing. And no matter what we do, he's writing that story how God wants to write it, and all of that stuff in there is going to happen exactly like that.
Yeah, well, that would be pretty insane in itself, wouldn't it, Kanyak?
Well, that kind of depends. Like, it really depends on whether God is evil or whether God is good. If he is good, we'll be okay, as long as we don't rebel against him. So he has to come and destroy us. If he is evil, we are in deep trouble and in deep shit. So just figure that out, whether God is good or evil. And then if you figure out that he's evil, you have a big problem. If you figure out he's good, it might not be the end of the world because he's good and he might have good plans for you.
Well, even figuring out that he exists somehow sounds pretty crazy to me.
Well, the Book of Revelation says that at some point the forces of the cosmos will tremble and be shaken, and stuff in the universe is going to get so weird and so unpredictable and so unlike what we think is going to happen that a lot of people will be like, yeah, maybe, and if you love these Matrix movies, it's really not too hard to start. There's so many scientists that already believe that we live in a simulation.
Well, I totally agree with that. That's sort of the main argument I have in favor of religion, is that if you accept the simulation argument, then it's not that big of a step to, wonder what is the simulation. You can simulate anything, including...
Yeah, if you believe that we live in a simulation, then the next question is, well, who programmed this simulation? Who is outside of it? What is its purpose, right? You could have this crazy batshit insane theory where eventually humanity will roam out through the galaxy, gather so much energy and so much processing power that we start building a virtual world that is as powerful as the world that we are in almost, and then we start simulating down, and you could say, and then that world will simulate down, and you could say that eventually you have kind of like a loop going on where the lowest simulated world then turns out to be the world above you. So it's kind of a loop, but that's a batshit, and that's logically that doesn't make any sense. And so the simulation argument goes like that. Well, if we extrapolate from where we are now, we are increasingly creating worlds that are more alike the real world. So why would in the future it not happen that we create a world that is so real that what is living in that world can actually be called alive? And then it goes like that. Well, if that is the case, if we simulate down and that works, then whatever we simulate down, again, when that is powerful enough and smart enough, can also simulate down. And if there is a chain of simulating down, who says we're at the top of that chain? If everybody is simulating down, statistically speaking, it would be incredibly unrealistic to believe that we're the highest chain. Yes, and then it is statistically speaking more likely that there are chains above us. And I agree with that argument. And I'm saying, and I say that if you go into the book of Genesis, it says that Adam was put to sleep, but it never says that he was woken up. So there you have a biblical phrase in the book of Genesis. going towards that we live in a simulation, mainly that Adam is dreaming right now, and that none of the stuff has truly happened, but everything that is happening inside of a dream. So we're inside of a dream right now. We're inside a simulation, and when we write stories, we simulate down. When we dream, we simulate down.
Yeah, well, to be clear, the simulation argument does leave open sort of free scenarios. I forgot the name of the guy. So do you remember?
No, but like this is not a theory that one scientist has come up. This is as old, like this is believing in a simulation.
Yeah,
is kind of like it's Plato.
Yeah, it's
Plato with his shadows and stuff.
Agree.
Yeah, it goes. I agree. And I'm saying it goes even back before that. This is any rational person that knows about dreaming can come up. You can call it a simulation. You can call it a dream. You can call it whatever you want. It's the same thing.
Well, I was just going to say there's sort of three scenarios. One is humanity extinguishes itself. We go extinct. Two is for some reason we lose interest in creating simulations. And three is we do get to the point where we can make advanced simulations. And then it is statistically much more likely that we are in one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I would agree with you there. That's sort of, I think that's the best argument in favor of religion. That if we are in a simulation, then why wouldn't religion be simulated as well? Like why wouldn't that story be real?
And then the next question is,
speaking of the Matrix, I think that's what the Matrix movies are about. Also, like Neo, when he wakes up, he's just in another level of the simulation. That's why he can control machines later on in the trilogy. Sidestep.
Yeah, so it would make sense if they make another Matrix movie that somebody wakes up again and is like, so there's more layers to it. And I wasn't truly like, it would be kind of a mind twist to have all of Zion and everything just be still a machine controlled world that they wake up in, just as a protection buffer between the real artificial intelligence, right?
I think that's what they're
plot twist, right?
I think that's what they're hinting at. They don't spell it out in the trilogy, but there's sort of hints there that is the case. And they are making a fourth one, by the way.
Yeah.
All right, man. Hey, and you think that's because I was on your own podcast or live stream a while ago, and you were explaining to me, one about the Book of Revelations, that you think Bitcoin is the mark of the beast or not the mark of the beast? What was the...
No, it's not. Okay, so there is a team in humanity that the more you try to do the best thing ever, the more the worst thing ever happens. There's even a Russian saying that goes like this: we did our best, but the usual happened. Meaning we did our best, but something horrible happened. And so the team is this. We're in the Bitcoin community, we're working towards a decentralized world. And because we're doing that, we're going to end up with the most centralized world ever. That's the theme. And that goes hand in hand with the Book of Revelation, right? If we for instance, society right now cannot get rid of coins and bills because we're not there yet. We can't do that yet. But we know that a lot of elite people would like to have a totally cashless society because it gives them more control, more power, more profit, all these things, right? Mm-hmm. When there's no coins and bills anymore and everything is digital money, there is we know coins and bills are used as a bridge between illegal and legal money. When you take that bridge away, governments can control more stuff. And then you would say, oh, but I know Bitcoin is going to protect me against that. Or you could say, well, no, it is because we have Bitcoin now that we have an alternative and we can actually get a cashless society now because we have Bitcoin. And so I believe Bitcoin right now is something good, but I'm saying the risk is that eventually, government doesn't really give a shit about Bitcoin too much. It's a small nuisance, but it's not Bitcoin is not something that is there that is threatening to government right now, but it could become that. And then there are, and then eventually we have this scenario where Bitcoin does become the global reserve currency rather than the United States dollars. That's something that you could believe in, that actually happens. Not because anybody wants to, but just because plan A is failing and the only plan B we have is Bitcoin.
I mean, it's my plan A at this point.
Yeah. So, so you're doing your best, working hard, trying to go to this world that once you have it, it might not be exactly that what you hoped it would be.
I mean, this has always been my my fear, so to say, that it will just turn out differently than what I imagined.
Yeah, and self-fulfilling prophecies are so extremely powerful because you can, if you just believe in something enough, you start working towards it, you start making it happen, you fulfill your own prophecy. Like
Well, I would say this is why I care so deeply about things like decentralization, things like protocol immutability, like these kinds of things, the things that I think Bitcoin sort of stands for, and a lot of the altcoins do not, because I think as long as you can safeguard these things, then I think we're probably relatively safe. At least,
how can Bitcoin be safe if the Chinese government tomorrow decides that their whole country is going to work towards getting as much Bitcoin hash rate on the blockchain? Who's going to protect anybody against that?
no, I agree. The 51% are are a problem. Censorship is a problem. These kinds of things are a problem. It's just that this argument leans on an invention that I'm not aware of, or that I'm not convinced of will happen, or I
No,
think
no,
it
no.
could turn out
Even
very
no,
differently as
that
well.
no. What I'm saying is that if we end up in a situation where there is a race between nation states and their allies to control as much hash rate, China is ahead of this race because of what they are as a nation. I'm not, but like if China could tomorrow go to all the Chinese mining pools and take control of them, right? And all the
Yes.
hash rate, I don't know what percentage of hash rate is actually, what percentage of ASICs is actually located within China,
Hmm.
because Bitmain and these big players, they have been moving their machines outside of China exactly because they are afraid that the Chinese government will come in and control all of that stuff,
Hmm.
right? So I don't know what the percentage is. I think that less than 50% of SHA-256 ASICs are actually in China right now. I think it's less than 50%. I think it's maybe 30 or 35 or 40%.
Hmm.
Because naturally, any place, naturally, all these ASICs are going to go towards those locations on the planet where electricity is the cheapest, and that's not just in China. That's in Canada as well. Any big what's that called, hydroelectricity, that's cheap electricity. That's where you'll have the ASICs, right? If you have a big wind park or big solar park, that's where you'll have the ASICs, right? And that's not going, but that entire game could change when somebody invents a new type of nuclear power, and we get our power from thorium rather than from uranium. Within 10, 15, 20 years, you'll have a worldwide electric revolution, and everything will be electric, and oil and gas will completely be done, and you will not have cars that drive on oil and gas anymore. Everything will just be electric.
Sure. Just to get back to what my question was, which I don't think you answered, or I
Okay.
missed it, but Bitcoin mark of the beast or not?
How can Bitcoin be a mark? That makes no sense whatsoever.
So what
But
is the mark of the beast, or what?
I
Why
don't
did
know.
because you brought this up last time, right?
Because out of, like, okay, so this is the rationality behind it. You need to know, let me just read, like, you don't know the book of Revelation, so you're missing the entire context. You don't know where this is
No,
situated.
I know
So
this. I know this fragment. This is that you can't pay anyone without the
yes,
mark of the
but
beast.
you don't know the context around that. Like, this is like, we cannot have a whole discussion about 3 lines from Lord of the Rings if you don't know the whole context. Like, uh, but yeah, we
Well,
could focus on that verse, but you don't know where this is situated within the story. You don't know the book of Revelation is a story. You don't know what the beginning is, the middle, what the end is. You don't know all these themes. You know random phrases from that book, and so there's not too much we could talk about the book after you've read it a couple of times within context. Then it makes a lot of sense to talk about it. So anyway, the
absolutely.
verse goes
I'm
like,
not claiming knowledge that I don't have. That's why I'm asking you.
yeah, the verse goes like that, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. So in a society where you have coins and bills are the most free of the free version of money that we know about, right? I mean, maybe gold coins is even freer because anybody could make gold coins, but coins and bills is really free. It's hard to track. You have it on you. this verse cannot be fulfilled when you have coins and bills. Because it says it says so that they could not buy or sell. It doesn't say so that they could not buy or sell if they didn't want to buy or sell, right? It says it's impossible for people to buy or sell unless they have the mark of the beast, which is its name of the beast or the number of its name.
Sure.
Because with cash money, with coins and bills, you'll just have this situation. There's a guy in a store that is selling some food. Somebody walks inside that does not have the mark. The other person is saying, hey, I'm not supposed to sell or buy to you because you don't have that mark. This person is saying, keep it quiet. I'll give you 10 or 100 times more for this loaf of bread than you usually get. What's the other person going to say? Okay, I'll keep it quiet. Nobody will know about it. Just give me your cash, right? So in a scenario where the world is still accepting cash, like paper money and bill, and you cannot have this verse be fulfilled. But in a world where the only form of money we have are computer programs within the Ethereum network, this verse can be fulfilled because the money itself can now make a decision. So you have a buyer and a seller, and they really want to make a transaction, and the money itself is a computer program, and the money itself says, hold on, I am programmed to check if both of you guys have the mark on you. You don't, so no transaction. Even if you want to make this transaction, you can't because the money says no.
Mm-hmm.
And that money being a computer program where the money itself can make a decision if a transaction is supposed to happen, that can come out of a world where we pass through it being Bitcoin first. Does that make sense? So I'm not saying that Bitcoin is fulfillment of this verse. I'm saying I'm seeing an evolution towards money will completely become digital, and I'm seeing that being Ethereum, Bitcoin, Litecoin, whatever it is. I don't know who's going to win this race. It could be Dogecoin. We could have a world where Dogecoin is the worldwide currency.
Could be dollars or SDRs as well. Anything digital.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But like the other like if it is just everything is the dollar, then all the other nations, every nation wanted to be its own currency, which is why it's probably going to end up being Bitcoin. Because we still have
or something like the SDR, which I mentioned.
What is SDR?
Oh man, that's a good question. If I have to explain it, it's going to be tricky. But I think it's like a unit of accounts that the IMF is maintaining, which is like a basket of different currencies.
Yeah. So that goes in hand with John Nash's ideal money.
I would say it goes in hand more with, for example, Keynes's Bancor is what he called it. So, but sure, like a global currency in any case.
And John Nash says that global currencies, they don't work because they all global currencies at one point have to have a link with actual reality, which means a link with an actual resource, with something that is finite, with either gold or some resource, whatever. And then John Nash was saying the problem is that countries lie about their resources. And so that if countries would be entirely transparent, you could have such a system that would actually work. And then, of course, the solution to John Nash's problem would be Bitcoin, where Bitcoin has a hard link with reality. Mainly, you need to burn through a vast amount of electricity to get to Bitcoin. So you go to a system where eventually the value of a Bitcoin will be linked to the amount of resources you need to create a certain unit of electricity. And that becomes a global standard that is transparent, that no country in the world can change. And then you can have a globe, and then all currencies in the world can link to this one link that has value and reality kind of mixed together, which is just energy, electric energy. That makes a lot of sense.
Yes. So you still haven't answered if it's the mark of the beast or not.
No, it's not. It's not the mark of the beast. Like, I mean, where is there? There's no numbers. There's no. I mean, I don't. The Book of Revelation says that the beast is a human being. I don't know who that is.
Why did you sell your Bitcoin? You sold your Bitcoin years ago. This is also something that came up in the last stream.
No, I didn't. I gave my Bitcoins away.
Yes, sorry, that's what I mean. Yeah.
I was having a psychosis. My brain was not working properly. I was in a mental hospital, and I gave all my Bitcoins away. I didn't really want to do that.
Was there a reasoning behind it, even if it was a psychosis?
The reasoning was I wanted to work on my mental health. I was too obsessed by Bitcoin while I was in this mental hospital. I didn't want to think about it anymore. I wanted to focus on getting my brain healthy, so I gave them all away. At the time, it was worth maybe $70 or 70 euros.
Okay. Well, I don't want to get too personal. I can stop asking questions here if you prefer me to.
No,
But
that's okay. You can ask personal questions. I don't care. I'm okay
okay,
with that.
because recently you wrote in that blog post that you now thought it wasn't a psychosis. So what's do you think it was or wasn't?
Well, let me ask you something. Have you ever not slept for 3 weeks straight? Have you
No.
ever been awake for 3 weeks? What's the longest you've ever been awake without sleeping?
Um, I don't know, maybe 50 hours,
50
something
hours. How did you
like that.
feel after those 50 hours? Did you see a change in your behavior?
Oh no, I mean I totally agree that you can get psychotic and have crazy. I've had that after. Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I'm okay with,
You need
you
sleep.
can, whatever I had, you can call it a psychosis, you can call it sleep deprived. It was all of those things all at once. But the thing is, I was once diagnosed with having schizophrenia, and that was a misdiagnosis. I don't have schizophrenia. I know that now, but like the doctors made some serious mistakes there in Belgium diagnosing me with something I don't have.
I kind of part of me wants to end the podcast because I usually cap them at an hour. Part of me feels like I find this interesting. Maybe I'm not even sure if many people find it
Well,
interesting.
we
As
can
long as I
have
find it interesting, I find it
yeah, that's
interesting. So I'm just
we
kind of
can have
content.
a part two if you want to some other time. Maybe you can put this out and see if people find it interesting enough that there should be a part two, and then we can talk some more.
Um, sure. Let's end it here.
Okay.
Oh, let's do that. I think that's we've covered a lot already. Um, yeah. Thanks for being on. I
Yeah,
thought it
you're
was
welcome.
interesting. It's a very unusual. Like it's not nothing like my other episodes so far. But
I feel like it kind of brings a whole bunch of things together, right? Like religion, Bitcoin, whatever is going to happen in the world. Like I mean, like I cannot always explain to people why that what I'm thinking about is not batshit insane, but it takes a while to go through the reasoning behind it, right?
I personally like discussing ideas that are out there, whether
Yeah,
it's like futuristic science or
yeah,
religion
yeah.
or whatever it is. I enjoy
And
that.
again, I just want to make sure everybody listens to that. I do not actually believe that China is doing all these things. I'm saying if I were China and it is my objective to conquer the whole world, this would be how I would approach it. That's what I'm saying.
Right. All right. Well, again, thanks for being on, and take
Yeah,
care. Stay
you're
safe.
welcome. See you, Aaron. Bye bye.
Cheers.